it's really a legacy project. I'm not going to see these elephants grow up and be wild elephants, but my sons will, and my grandchildren will, and I'm determined that that's going to happen.
Conservation Spotlight, a series of interviews conducted with leaders in conservation that aims to share the current threats and challenges facing the protection and restoration of wildlife and nature all around the world. This series is produced by Behind the Scenes of Nature.
Shall I turn my video on now?
Yeah, you can turn it on now and we can get started like that. There's my camera. Whoop! Kind of want to just hear what's going on right now for you in Zimbabwe. My name is Donal Boyd and welcome to another episode of Conservation Spotlight. During today's interview, I'll be speaking with my dear friend, Roxy Danckwerts, founder of Wild is Life and the Zimbabwe Elephant Nursery located in Harare, Zimbabwe. Roxy is joining me from Harare while I'm conducting the interview from Arindi Private Game Reserve in Namibia. In collaboration with the International Fund for Animal Welfare, Roxy and her family rescue, rehabilitate, and release orphaned elephants back into the wild in a mission that owes its success to a culture of care and a wholehearted dedication to the mantra, little by little, a little becomes a lot. In this episode, both Roxy and I speak about our mutual love for elephants, why they're worth protecting, and the unprecedented challenges she's facing to carry out their mission amidst the global pandemic. The stakes are high, but what lessons can we as humans learn from elephants during these difficult times? How much milk does an orphaned elephant drink in a month? And how can you help to secure a future for elephants right now? So I guess it's pretty simple to start off. It's just introduce yourself, say, hello, my name is, and what your role is at Wild is Life and Zimbabwe Elephant Nursery, and maybe just anything else you want to add.
Okay, all right. So, hi, Donal. I'm Roxy Danckwerts, and I'm from Wild is Life and the Zimbabwe Elephant Nursery, and we're a rescue center, rehabilitation center based in Zimbabwe. And we rescue a variety of wild animals, but mainly our main focus at the moment is on orphaned elephant calves, where we rescue them from various circumstances where they've been orphaned, and especially when they're milk-dependent babies, and then we rehabilitate them and ultimately release them back into the wild.
So that's our main focus.
That's awesome, yeah. And just for everybody watching this, I've had the very fortunate opportunity of visiting several times and seeing firsthand the work that you all do and the dedication of your family. So amazing to actually see what you've been able to do as a family. And that's what I think distinguishes you all from any other organization. There's not really that many organizations doing what you're doing, especially in Zimbabwe, right? Are you not the only one?
Well, in Zimbabwe, there are some really good sanctuaries and rescue centers, but none of the others are doing elephant rescue. And I think of all the animals, elephant rescue is, significantly, more difficult and more expensive. And elephant calves really are probably the most difficult animal that I've ever wanted to try and help and raise from babies. They need really, really specialized milk formula, but it's not just about the milk formula. There's a whole multitude of and multifaceted levels that you have to put into raising these babies. And you look at them and you think they're very robust animals, and they're not. They're really not. They're very complicated, and their psychological state is also hugely significant and impacts greatly on their physical state. So it's a challenging, very challenging project. And I think, being a family-oriented organization, it's really a legacy project. I'm not going to see these elephants grow up and be wild elephants, but my sons will, and my grandchildren will, and I'm determined that that's going to happen. So we're really lucky that the whole family is involved, and we've got
both sons are actually involved in different ways, and my husband is extremely supportive. And I think that it really helps being a family organization. because we all understand each other and we don't have to sort of explain anything, and everyone shares in the heartache and the joy and the journey, as it were. And it is a journey. It's an extraordinary journey that I've chosen alongside the family. So not easy, but really, really worthwhile.
Yeah, and thank you. That's really cool to hear. And I mean, maybe explain about where you started and when did you start, and then how big is the operation now?
So I've always loved animals, and I grew up with animals, and we always had horses and cattle and sheep and dogs and cats and and sometimes small animals and I've got a very strong affiliation to animals, but wildlife really is my first love. But above all, elephants are my first love. So I started a couple of decades ago, really about 20 something years ago, doing small animals. It grew and it grew and it grew and it grew, and all of that time I was just learning and learning and learning.
Tell me a little bit more about, like, you have the nursery in Harare and you have the relocation center up in Pandamasui.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
So we have the nursery, which is for the smaller babies and the initial rescue babies, and that's based here in Harare, and I run that here, and we have 13 elephants here at the moment. And then when they're big enough, or I deem them ready, we've got a release site up in northwestern Zimbabwe, where we've got 34,000 hectares, which we have leased for 25 years from the Forestry Commission of Zimbabwe. The project has leased this land, and we're basically rehabilitating that land at the same time as releasing these elephants back into the wild. So up there are now 14 elephants, which my son, and he is managing that, Joss is managing that and running that really well. And there's so much going on there, and it's just so exciting to see, the interactions that are happening on a daily basis. The wild ellies are coming back and they're coming to visit, especially the big bulls. And we have a few ellies that are going out for days at a time, and they go out searching, and learning, and then the rest of the herd are just learning the basics and making their own choices. And I think that's the biggest thing is for these elephants to make their own choices so that they can be wild elephants again.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that you have the full circle, like from rescuing, rehabilitating them, and you're working with them with the ultimate release to bring them back to the wild. So I think that's the most significant thing you can do.
I think it's really important. I think elephants don't do well in captivity, and it's been seen that there's a lot of cruelty involved in the past in training elephants. That is obviously changing now. But I think more and more people see that, and I think they need vast areas in which to roam, and they're not happy in captivity, and they shouldn't be there. We should be doing our best to put them back where they belong.
And I guess probably one of the things that a lot of people may not understand, Roxy, is like, actually, where did the rescued elephants come from? Like, why do they actually need rescuing in the first place? And like, how do you become informed about that, or why do they need to be rescued, and what's the whole situation that they come from?
So there are a variety of reasons for rescue, and we try really to focus on orphans that have been orphaned due to man-made circumstances. So poaching is an issue, and then where the mother is killed for her tusks, or a herd is attacked by poachers in one way or another, and we've had instances where these elephants the baby has been left behind, and we've gone in and rescued the baby, but the trauma there is very, very significant. There are car accidents and train accidents, and And the other thing is that elephants are so water dependent, and the babies get knocked around when especially when it's very dry in the dry season, and they can fall into water troughs and they get stuck there. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that is certainly a man-made problem. So they're there, and then the herd leaves, and the mother is desperate, and she has to make a choice. Does she stay with the herd, or does she stay with her baby? And we have found quite a number of babies that have been rescued out of water troughs and water points, and we've had to do those rescues. So there's a variety of causes. Last year we did a lot of rescues because of the drought, and it was in one particular area where there were a lot of elephants dying from the drought and from heat as well. And we did some rescues there. Obviously, we can't rescue all the orphaned elephants. We can't do that. I mean, it's just not sustainable, and it doesn't make sense. But particularly if it's a man-made issue, then we will go in and we will rescue.
Wow. And what is the average age actually of the babies that you rescue, of the orphans?
So an elephant calf, we will rescue an elephant calf generally when they're under 2 years old, because at that and up until that age they still need milk. And elephant calves drink from their mother for quite some years, and they are milk dependent, most certainly until they're 2 years old. So
just until the little tusks start to erupt, elephants generally under that age are the age that we need to get in there. Those slightly older calves are often absorbed very well by the herds, and the aunties and the sisters and whatever will take over. And if they don't need milk, then they have got a chance of survival. But the ones that are younger than that, there just is no chance of survival. They cannot survive without milk.
Yeah, they're the most vulnerable then.
Yeah.
Right now, with the coronavirus being this global pandemic and the crisis all around the world with supplies and people, I guess the economy shrinking a little bit, what is the biggest challenge that you foresee that has on your operations? Will there be more instances where orphans need to be rescued, or will it be a lack of funding, or what is the biggest challenge, I guess, or challenges?
I think, Donal, the biggest problem is that with the coronavirus, we've had our day-to-day challenges, and we stay committed to our purpose through these day-to-day challenges. But going forward, I think funding and the shrinking world economy, global economy, is really a huge worry for us, because wildlife conservation is very far down the list of organizations that will need help. There are so many people now unemployed, and there is no spare money, really. It's people first. But what I have an anxiety about is that with these lockdowns that have happened and the coronavirus, is that humans have become very, they're sort of living in a microcosm and very anthropocentric, where it's just about the humans. And, when we come out of this crisis, the planet is still turning, and the animals hopefully are still there, and they still need help. We can't just forget about them and think, well, they must just get on with it. We've been managing animals for so for centuries.
And now if we suddenly decide that we can't manage them anymore, what is going to happen? And I really do have some significant worries about that. And I just hope that people are able to look outside of themselves, or humanity is able to look outside of herself and look at the bigger picture, because the planet still turns. And
home is not your house. Home is not your flat or your apartment. Your home is the planet. And, we have to stay really, as human beings, I think we have to remember that. And that for me is the biggest challenge. And that's something that the whole conservation community and wildlife community need to keep front and center.
Yeah, wow, that was a good answer. I mean, yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I think a lot of people are, like you said, locked down in their apartments right now, and they're like already disconnected. Now they're shrinking in and thinking about paying their rent, let alone paying for anything else that, I mean,
Absolutely.
they need. They don't recognize every day that they need it. It's that day-to-day stuff that it's hard for them to see, but long term it's like, will their children have the same planet if they don't think beyond just their apartment rent? The answer is no, they won't have the same planet. They'll have their apartment maybe, but what good is an apartment without a world outside it to go and visit and love? And
feed the soul, which is, let alone anything else, let alone all the practicalities of that. So absolutely. And I think it's a huge worry, and it's
the connectivity somehow. We've everybody, myself included, we've all just shrunk into these little microcosms, and we have to force ourselves, all of us, to think bigger and greater.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And let's take one pause for a second, Roxy. I just want to check the video feed. Okay,
should I turn mine off as well?
So let's just check, is your video working?
Okay, no, I think, no, something's flashing here. Bugger.
That was a really great explanation there and a little dialogue that we had. So I guess the retracting economy, I think, is one thing, and people thinking kind of too close, or they're not really thinking big world right now. They're thinking just their apartment. But I think by sharing our pictures and our impressions of nature we're sharing like the fact that there is still nature out there in need, and what you're doing hasn't stopped. You're continuing it because it has to continue. So I think maybe now it's like been 2 months where most of the world has been in lockdown, but people are starting to like warm up a little bit and like look back out their windows and look beyond just themselves, and they're realizing again that there still is a lot at stake here beyond just their paycheck or their apartment or their vacation or whatever it is. So like the challenges that you're facing right now with getting resources and supplies and funding haven't gone away. And what is actually the biggest thing? Like right now you're running the fundraiser for the milk bottles, but maybe you can explain a little bit about that. Like how much milk do these elephants actually need? You can just explain like how the biggest challenge right now is making sure you have funds to
keep going
forward.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge at the moment is just to ensure that we have funds to keep going, to keep these babies fed with the milk that they need. And we'll obviously make adjustments, and basically everything that's not essential we have cut right back on. So we're being very, very careful, obviously. But the milk is a significant need that we have. It's over 5,000 bottles of milk a month is how many bottles we make. And that's a lot of milk.
Yeah.
And we have to import it, and, our borders are closed, and, we're struggling to get that in. But right now, that is our most important challenge, is keep up with the funding of feeding the milk. I obviously have some concerns about the project as a whole, but for the time being, that is what is worrying me tremendously.
Right. And how can just people who watch this, how can people who find your organization and care about elephants, how can people who care about elephants actually contribute and help? Like, what can they do?
Well, I think we've got a GoFundMe, a crowdfunding platform going, a fundraising platform going, which you've helped us with, and we're very grateful for. And if people haven't got enough spare money, I completely understand. If they can donate, that's wonderful. Or they just share, and we just keep sharing, and hopefully, a few people will pick up and donate even if it's 1 or 2 bottles, one bottle is $5, and that every single dollar counts, and we use that money very, very carefully. We're keeping our costs right down, so it's pretty critical actually. So if people can share and just spread the word, that's all.
Yeah, and I love the phrase that you've adopted. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. It's actually one of my all-time favorite just mantras, I guess you could call it, right? Because every little piece, just you add a little grain of sand, another grain of sand, and it becomes a whole beach eventually. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it all fits in with, it's one at a time. We go, we do baby steps, and then we might take a giant leap. But the little by little is very significant, because every single thing that comes in here, every single penny gets used for these animals. And it's all important. And I think little by little, a little becomes a lot, as we've used that mantra for quite some years now. And it's very meaningful in a number of ways. It's actually an African proverb. It's comes from African culture, and it's a really good one.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. Cool. Yeah. I have one more question, and then I'll ask you if you have anything else to add, if you do want to add anything. Okay. But I guess what is it about the elephants? Why do you feel? Because I'll try to answer myself as well. Why is it that you feel so strongly about elephants in particular? Was there any experience that you had, or was it a memory, or maybe what's your earliest memory of an elephant?
I've always loved the elephants. We used to go into the bush, into the wild as children, and in those days, you could walk quite freely through the bush. And I remember wandering off edge, I don't know, 13 or something, and sitting on a log, and there was a big bull nearby, and I just sat there for hours just watching him, and he knew I was there. But I suppose that connection, it becomes a spiritual connection in a funny way. And I've watched elephants for years, and the trends and the ups and the downs, but working with them now, and I just look in their eyes, and there's something really, really special there that's very close to humans, that level of sentience, that they can feel you, and we can feel them if we care to listen, and we care to try. And I think it has been said, they're nature's great masterpiece. They really are the landscapers of the continent, really, and they're very, very important to the culture of Africa, and they're very important to tourism and our economy as well. So, it's a multi-leveled.
Hello. Oh, cut up for a second. Hello.
Oh, this network. God, goodness.
Let's see. Oh, I can see you now. Yeah, no worries. I think it cut out on my end as well. It said poor network connection. But I think I get what you're saying there. It's they have some other emotion about them, that we can feel that there's something more than what we have. I think you and I both, we feel that there's this deeper emotion to elephants in particular, that by being around them, we can feel that there's more than what we have. It's we know love and hate and fear and things like that. And when you sit and you watch an elephant, whether it's on a log for hours, you're entranced by it, because you just don't know what you're missing. And because of that, it's that there's something there that you also want to learn. And I think that when you are around elephants and when you see that, when you feel it, we can't let it go. And I think that you've seen it over the years, that there's something in their emotion, the way that they connect, that maybe we've lost as humans, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the level of sensitivity that they have, and the level of everyone uses this word sentience or emotion or whatever. It's something otherworldly, and every single day I'm amazed by some of the things that these elephants do for each other, for us, or I learn something, or and their receptivity, as it were, and their connection and their memories, and how also on the downside how badly trauma affects them. I mean, I've had babies in here that they have nightmares. They cry out and they go and hide their heads, and they bury their heads in their chest, and from heartbreak. And there's no aggression, there's no nastiness. They accept and they try to nurture and help the others. They sort of recognize that there's a need for the nurture. We have one animal here called Moyo, who she was our first elephant. And we honestly cannot do this job without her. And a baby elephant will come in severely traumatized, and she will just embrace this elephant, and her temporal glands will start running, and she'll rumble, and she'll put her trunk around the baby, and you just see this baby relax, and it'll drink, and it'll, just calm down, and it'll start to sleep better, and and then they just rumble at each other all night, and they what they're saying to each other, I have no idea, but they are, and really extraordinary stuff, really extraordinary animals.
I think
worth protecting.
There's something, definitely worth protecting, and something we can learn, I think, Justin, from what you said, right? For what we should do, how we should behave. We should behave more like elephants, I think.
We should be more elephant.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Roxy, for taking the time to kind of think through these things with me, and to share your story, and a little bit about how people can give back to the project that you're working on to really safeguard this incredible species that we all can learn a lot from, and that we all need to protect in order to keep it around for forever. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Donal, really, and thank you for, taking the trouble to learn about them and to learn about the project, and for sharing our story. You've helped us enormously, and we're enormously grateful to you and to all your viewers and your friends, and it's just fabulous. So really big appreciation.
Oh yes, all the elephant hugs. We can shut off the cameras then, I'll turn mine off.
Okay, let me turn it off.
Thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. And see you in the next episode of Conservation Spotlight.